welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm sure we'll have a few more trickling in. So my name is Vincent Leclerc, and I'm the Senior Operations Coordinator at DOC. And we are excited to be announcing our new partnership with Getty Images, a partnership that we feel is going to be of great benefit to our members, especially in the age of COVID-19. But before I introduce our moderator, who will kick off the discussion, I would like to touch on a few logistical items. So throughout this webinar, we invite you to submit questions using the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. And we will have a 15-minute Q&A panel following the presentation, and we'll be drawing from those questions. This session is also being recorded and will be made available on the DOC YouTube page. We will also send out the recording in a post-webinar email. So if you know anyone who could not join us today, I invite you to share the recorded session. Now, before I get started, I would like you all to take a few seconds to complete this poll that you should see on your screen. This will help our panelists to get a better sense as to who's joining us and will help center this discussion. So I'm going to give about 45 seconds to go through. It's only about a 4-question poll. Okay, just waiting on a few more. Okay, well, looks like we've got about 64% responding. So the majority are producers. We have 28% directors joining us. Majority joining us are emerging, so less than 5 professional credits. And it looks like we're scattered all throughout Canada, but with the majority come from BC. And most of us have not used the Getty Images archive before, so this will be a good session to introduce. Okay, as you can see here. Now, before I pass the mic off to our moderator, Elizabeth Klinck, as a modest act of reconciliation and in line with the protocols of our community gatherings, I would like to acknowledge that the land I am here on is Toronto, is on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. It is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. My colleagues and I make this acknowledgement as a touchstone in our process of learning what it means to live on colonized land, the role that we play, and as an expression of solidarity with our Indigenous sisters and brothers. I'd like to welcome those of you on the call, if you wish, to acknowledge the territory you are joining from in the chat down below. Now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our moderator, Elizabeth Klinck, who has been a member of DOC Ontario for many years. Elizabeth is an award-winning archive producer and music clearing specialist whose work on international documentaries and interactive projects have garnered Emmy, BAFTA, CSA, Peabody, and Oscar awards. In 2014, she was awarded the inaugural DOC Luminary Award for her mentoring and leadership in the Canadian documentary community. And in 2019, the Academy of Canadian Cinema and Television presented her with their prestigious Board of Directors tribute for her body of work in volunteerism in the Canadian and international documentary film communities. So I want to welcome Elizabeth and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here, and I'm delighted to be with one of my favorite archive companies, Getty Images. I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce the individual representatives from Getty, starting with our first panelist, Darlene Gilberti, who is the Senior Manager of Strategic Partnerships based in LA. And thanks for getting up early to join us today. Panelist number 2, Jeff Axelrod, who's based here in Toronto and is our Canadian rep, is the Business Development Manager here. And panelist number 3, Eric Simon, someone I've had the great pleasure of knowing for many decades, is a Senior Research Project Manager based in New York City. And finally, last but not least, Heather Tanning, who is the Manager of Regional Marketing, who's based in Los Angeles. So welcome to you all, stretched out across many time zones. And I'm delighted that you're all able to join us today. It's just terrific to have you here. I'd like to start by just getting to know a little bit. Many of us know about Getty Images, but there's some people on this webinar today that don't. So maybe, Heather, you'd like to start off by telling us a little overview of what it's all about, and maybe you can show us some visuals as well.
Absolutely. So first, Elizabeth, thank you for the lovely introduction, and to the DOC, to Vince and Michelle, thank you so much for having us here. And to all the members, we are so happy to have this partnership with you now, and we're so excited to tell you more about the company and to help you with your projects. So to give you a little bit of background on Getty Images, and I'm really excited that there's so many newbies to Getty Images on this call, because this is something I love to talk about, and I love to talk about Getty to new people. So just to kind of set it up, Getty Images has something of an identity issue, right? A lot of people have heard of us, they know about us, they think they understand what we do, they've seen us on the red carpet, they've seen our sports imagery, but don't necessarily know all of what Getty Images represents and what Getty Images does. Recently, we actually found an unauthorized use on a t-shirt website, and the t-shirt said, Estelle Getty Images. So we at least know that we're as popular as the Golden Girls. So I guess that's a good sign, but not everybody understands the complete picture of Getty Images. So I'm going to give you a little rundown. So Getty Images, of course, it's in the name, right? We have images. And just to give you a sampling of the collections that are, amongst my favorites, Batman, Slim Aarons, Sigma, Time Life, Sports Illustrated, Michael Oakes. We represent all of that incredible content. We also have a huge video archive that a lot of people don't know about. And just to mention some of the collections that we represent, the BBC Motion Gallery, ITN, Bloomberg, Vice Media, NHK, and most recently the NBC News Archives. And my personal favorite for this year, MTV B-roll, as a child of the 80s. But I'm warning you now, don't get lost on the MTV B-roll on the Getty Images website. It's very much like TikTok. Hours will just drift by and you won't know what happened. But beyond all of that, beyond the incredible collections that we represent, we understand the gravity and the responsibility behind being a media organization and being a company that creates imagery. And one of the mottos that we often use at the company is change the image, change the perception. So it's not just about aggregating all of this content and having a library of content we represent to share, but also about being a driving force for change. And we've really spent the last couple of years making sure that we're creating diverse content that's really reflective of the world as it actually exists. And we've created a lot of alliances in the last couple of years with organizations such as See Her and the Unstereotype Alliance and AARP, and most recently GLAAD, which was announced this week, that I'm incredibly proud of. We've created collections that are really reflective of society, such as the Disrupt Aging collection and a disability collection, and a collection called Nosotros, which is all content created of and by the Latinx community. And my personal favorite, which I just have to always talk about, is Project Show Us, which was a campaign where we created thousands of photos of female and female identifying subjects, all shot by female and female identifying photographers, where the subjects actually keyworded themselves. And when you have a subject keywording themselves, being able to identify who they really are, changes the entire structure of an algorithm on a search website, and you start seeing the world as it actually should be reflected. So that's all to say that we're just a bunch of nerds at Getty Images, and we love really studying imagery trends. We love studying search trends. We love understanding what engages people and what people need to see. So it's not just about the collections, it's about really creating content for the world. But having said all that, I am a film nerd. So I would like to show a little clip about our wonderful video partner collections. So Vince, if you could cue up clip number 1, this is our sizzle reel for this year. Please enjoy.
Wonderful. One of my favorite shots was included in your sizzle reel, the tank man. So,
Oh, Tiananmen Square, a great one, right?
wonderful,
Yeah, an important
wonderful
BBC shot.
You bet. Well, we do represent a documentary organization of Canada, hundreds of documentary filmmakers. And so I thought it would be interesting to talk a little bit about the state of documentary and what's happening in the factual market in general that's over the last 9 months since we've been confronted with COVID-19. And maybe both Darlene and you, Jeff, could talk a little bit about what you've seen as change and also how people are perceiving Getty Images during this period. Darlene, do you?
Yes, thanks, Elizabeth. Yeah, so I mean, the climate has changed for us, I would say, to say the least. And I'm sure everyone on this call could attest to that, and adjusting how you work on a day to day. And we feel that here as well. So when the pandemic first started back in March, we really didn't know what was going to happen to the production space. And me and Jeff, we've been in this within this space for a few years now. We didn't know if people were going to rely on content ever more now because we weren't able to go out and shoot, or it would just kind of go away for a while. And surprisingly, what I found at least is we were busier than ever, which was a surprise. But it taught us that people were consuming content more than ever. What were we doing when we had to stay home? We were watching TV. So I think a lot of the studios and the small production houses, they felt that a little bit, that pressure a little bit to start maybe thinking a different way. And so we saw a lot more documentaries kind of coming out of that. So I definitely think that, yeah, it was a little bit different, but we saw a lot of people relying on stock content or archival B-roll, things like that, because again, they weren't able to go out and shoot it themselves. So what we had to do was say, have these conversations and say, you know what, it's going to benefit you economically to rely on this type of content and license it versus, go through all the hoops to get a cameraman out there or whatnot. And of course it's way more dangerous, at least at this point. So yeah, I definitely think that now is a different time. We're seeing a lot of things coming back online, and we're here to support that in any way that we can, and open up our content to make it available, make it easily accessible to you guys as possible. And I think it's important to also kind of address like the big pink elephant in the room. I think that's how you say it, right? But I think it's important to kind of come off it immediately, like, right in the beginning of this conversation and say, as your direct contacts, we're here to do what we can to make our content affordable and again, easily accessible as possible. So if you are new to Getty Images, you might think, oh, Getty Images is the best. We have the best content, which is, we would say most likely to be true, right? The most wide offering. But, I don't know if you've ever said, well, Getty's too expensive. So what we want to do is kind of just put it out there that we're here to help to adjust what we can to make it fit for you, for your budget. And those are conversations that we can have when we establish these relationships going forward. We can do what we can to make that work. So we're here to support for sure.
And Jeff, coming from a Toronto Canadian perspective?
I guess for me, it certainly, when the pandemic hit, there was certainly a little bit of a lull when production folks tried to figure out what to do and how to finish projects that were already in progress or those that just got the green light. And now many couldn't be able to go out and shoot, particularly some of the documentaries, so they were stuck. So there's a whole host of things that happened, but to go on top of what Darlene said is we were busier than ever. So I was amazed at the flexibility of the documentary world to be able to pivot to more animal documentaries, things that were in progress. They reached out and found our breadth and depth of content that we have a lifesaver. They really didn't have a whole lot of options. And then to be able to work with Darlene and I and some folks on the production team to work with them from a service perspective. We've got, and Eric will talk about it, we've got millions of pieces of content that's not on our site today. No one has seen them before. So to elevate some of these projects, to use archival material was a bonus. And then to do it in a way that worked with their budgets. So, it was a win-win for Getty to be able to support, valuable industry and to be able to work with our documentary filmmakers to help finish the projects and to start and complete these types of projects. So we were thrilled. And yes, I agree with Darlene. I often, particularly with folks who have never worked with us before, the impression can be when you go to our site and you play with the calculator, some of the things seem woefully unaffordable, but we're here as ambassadors. The earlier you have us involved in the projects, the better, so that we can set expectations, let you know what's available, work with our offline team and Eric on obtaining some amazing content, and then figure out the package solution. However you want to work, we're here for you. So please reach out anytime.
And it's absolutely true. I can speak from my own personal experience how you can tailor make it to what the budget is of a production. And there's lots of different strands and stratas and stratospheres, but there's lots of room there for you to be very flexible. I think it's interesting on a personal note, all of the researchers and archive researchers have been working, at home in our bedrooms and living rooms for years. So it was a pretty fast pivot for us. We always like to joke and say we've been planning for this moment for decades. So we were ready to go, and it was great to see how quickly you and many of the other archives were able to transform almost immediately. I'd like to open up another question, just in terms of specific examples of documentary work that maybe perhaps you, Eric, because the work you do is so absolutely marvelous. Maybe there's a couple of examples of things you can talk about where you were looking for never before seen material, the goodies that you have stashed in that wonderful mine of yours. So tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. No, as we prepped for the call, we talked about, eureka moments while doing this kind of work. And it occurred to me that there's sort of two levels of eureka moments. There's the moments where, we're able to uncover things that either weren't known or weren't accessible. And there's so much good content that it can really shift a client's project where they now are rethinking how they're going to set something up, a certain segment, et cetera. And then there's the other kind of eureka moments where, it's required, and certainly hope for that, a specific photo or film clip can be located, sort of like the needle in the haystack thing. Maybe it's a relicense or that sort of thing. So a couple of short examples that came to mind recently for both. The former type would be, I have several clients right now doing a variety of projects that Harlem in the 1960s and 70s. And there really is a glut at that time, as many of you know, for good footage. And we have a small collection within our internal offline footage archive called Bill Miles. And I remembered some things from when I was, able to go into the office and pull screeners and preview footage with time code burned in, et cetera, from this collection. And we had some very poorly shot listed records that we had acquired with the material at the time. And it indicated that a lot of the footage was black and white, but I remember that some had been in color. Excuse me. So I, begged and pleaded for our post-production folks to order in the master elements and to go through and to see what was there. And this was maybe 2 or 3 months ago, I think. And sure enough, we uncovered, I think it was between like 30 and 60 minutes of great late 1970s color Harlem footage.
Wow.
Street signage, street scenes, people outside brownstones. There was a portion that involved a military parade in the neighborhood, kids playing, just great stuff. And when I was, our post-production folks uploaded it to the site, I sent it to our clients, just really excited reactions. This is so great. We can definitely use so much of this and that kind of thing. Another example of a great hidden gem in our internal footage archive was a few months ago, somebody was doing a documentary and they wanted Warner Brothers backlot studio footage from the 1920s. And their director really, really wanted the water tower. They were dying to have old Warner Brothers lot footage with the water tower. So I found a few records. A couple were a little coy. One mentioned the water tower in the background. Another mentioned that a scene took place under the water tower, so it wasn't really clear if you could see the water tower or not. But luckily, the client had a little bit of a budget and they were able to help us to cover the costs of the pulling of the material and the editing and the digitization. And sure enough, we got maybe, I think, 1 or 2 dozen really good clips from it, 2 or 3 of which had great extended shots of the water tower. So the client was really happy about that. And then a reverse, as far as like the needle in the haystack moments go, a couple of years ago, somebody sent me a still of a van in front of Westminster Abbey with a sign about a parliamentary sex scandal, nothing that mentioned Profuma or anything, but they needed to locate this specific newsreel within 24 hours. I did some digging around. I located a record in our system that mentioned something that might have it. I couldn't preview it because there wasn't time. I found the corresponding Universal Newsreel on YouTube. Sure enough, it had the keyframe that the client had sent. Our post-production folks in less than 24 hours were able to digitize it for the client and essentially save their project. Something else a couple of years ago, or actually earlier this year, client sent me a link to an hour-long video at the Library of Congress shot on March of Washington in 1963. And they wanted this one specific 30 segment, I think it was like 15 to 30 second segment. I looked for it on our site, couldn't find it, looked in our offline internal library, didn't see anything that looked like it included it, but something was really bothering me. I felt like this is something that if we didn't have, we should be able to provide. So I went back to our website and started looking at other things from that day. And I went back to the Library of Congress link that the client originally sent and looked what else was in this full hour long beyond just the 15 seconds that they requested. And sure enough, there was something in the hour that we had a different clip of from our partner Onyx Media. So I reached out to Onyx Media. I said, hey, client needs this. We have this. Looks like it might be from the same day. Any chance you can go through what you have? And in less than 24 hours, they were able to locate the shot the client needed, get it to our site. And, again, at the risk of breaking my arm, patting myself on the back, we kind of saved the client's project a little bit. So, and that really hopefully illustrates some of the value that, myself and the other researchers, because I'm not the only researcher at Getty who's been here for a couple of decades. We really enjoy digging for these things to try to help you make your projects all that they can be. And our experience, because the Getty internal footage archive that's offline is essentially the old archive films, archive photos archive, which is where I started in the late 1990s. So myself and a few other people, we're really like sort of the last bastions who know what's there. And there's so much. So, that's, like I said, sort of the value hopefully that we can bring.
It's always interesting for me to ask what percentage of material at an archive is digitized and available online. And it's always surprising how much still needs to be digitized and is not online. And that's where the gems are. So what would you have a sort of a ballpark figure for that?
It's often been said that we estimate somewhere between 5 and 10% of what's in the offline archive has been digitized for the website. But like you said, there's just so much there. Some of it, unfortunately, we're at the mercy of the records that came with the footage when we acquired it, and we don't really have the time to dedicate, the ROI just isn't there to go through it all and shot list it all, let alone digitize it all. So, there is, and it's really, it covers everything. It goes from the late 19th century Edison prints to silent films, sound films, industrial films, educational films, travelogues, documentaries, people's home movie collections, newsreel outtakes, Hollywood studio outtakes. It really, just runs the gamut. So hopefully, whatever you need, we have it someplace.
That's fantastic. Just one moment. I'm having a little problem with my power. 1 minute.
And I can actually, this is a good time to actually show something really quickly, because it matches up really well with what Eric was just talking about in the offline archives. So again, kind of going back to the fact that we're all footage nerds here. So we always get asked the question, what's in the archive? And it's a really hard question to answer, because with an archive as large as we have, we're the largest privately owned archive in the world with millions and millions of assets. It's hard to proactively dig for material. So when we do find these incredible gems in our collection, we house them on this particular page. And this is going to be a leave behind, so you'll be able to check out this full page after the call. But this video playing right now on the screen is what we believe to be the earliest footage of Marilyn Monroe as a teenager. So just to kind of point to how rare some of this material can be. And as I said, I'm going to let you guys poke around this on your own, but just to give you a little more of an idea, this is my favorite section in here, Famous and Infamous, where we actually have home movies from celebrities like Van Johnson, where there's actual footage of Elizabeth Taylor with Mike Todd and Eddie Fisher in the background. So, you can read into that whatever you want. And then this wonderful footage that we just got from the Howard Bruckner collection, his outtakes from his William Burroughs documentary. And it features this amazing content of William Burroughs and Andy Warhol having a dinner conversation where Andy is inexplicably wearing headphones the entire time, Walkman headphones, but still talking to Burroughs like they're just having a conversation. I mean, it's wonderful. Is it performance art? Was that just Andy? Who knows? Anyway, there's so many gems to be discovered in here, and you'll just have such a ball kind of walking through all of this material. So that's one resource that we can offer to everybody, and something that you can often come back to and check out to see what new material we found.
Thank you. And thank you for covering. We've had some crazy weather here, and I was afraid I was losing my power, but we're back on track. So thank you so much. You've actually talked a little bit about something near and dear to my heart, which is research. And if I can just take 2 seconds to introduce the organization that I'm a part of, which is the Visual Researchers Society of Canada. And every one of our members, which are over 100, based right across Canada, all the way from Newfoundland and up to Nunavut and across to British Columbia. We have some wonderful members, and they all have worked at one point or another with Getty Images, but they have a great, great professional development, and they are a great valuable asset to the Canadian documentary community. So I hope you'll take a chance to, an opportunity to look at our website, which is visualresearch.ca, and we can explore and talk about how our members can work in conjunction with you as producers and Getty Images and form a nice partnership or triangle or whatever you want to call it. So that's fantastic. Heather, I wanted to speak to you a little bit about, in addition to what you were talking about, but some of the in-house editorial coverage that you offer, and maybe you can talk a little bit about some of the Canadian content that you have in your collection as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So probably a good way to kick this off might be to show the editorial show reel.
Perfect.
We're going to show you some of our in-house content, and then I'll speak to our collection.
Okay, great.
Sometimes it falls upon a generation to be great. You can be that great generation. Let your greatness blossom.
And yes, we will build the wall.
No matter what the president says, this country belongs to you.
Iran shall never possess any nuclear weapons.
You don't believe in the science of man-made climate change, you might as well not believe in gravity. It's not about being from one place, looking like one thing, one race. We are all human beings, but collectively, we are all the champions.
Fantastic.
So as you can see, we're very international. So we have over 340,000 contributors that create the Getty Images collection. And certainly there is, we're very focused on making sure that we have local and relevant content for all territories. And Canada is, of course, one of the most important territories that we cover. And we have alliances with Canadian periodicals and news organizations to ensure that we're getting that local content as well. We are constantly refreshing this material. A great example that I can give you is there was a documentary earlier this year called Stars and Strife, which was a documentary that really explored the cultural divide in the States right now. And they had come to us in January to start their licensing process. And their film was pretty much complete. They'd already found the material that they wanted to utilize. And then as we started to, finish the license, and Darlene, you're very well acquainted with this as you were on this project, the pandemic hit. And suddenly you can't have a documentary that's speaking to any sort of politics in any country and not talk about the pandemic. And so it becomes an issue of finding new material that's relevant to re-examine this subject matter. So they basically had to take their script and sort of reconfigure how they were going to tell this narrative. And this is, of course, this is something that's really, beyond the scope of just the States. It's going to extend globally. And considering that they had to finalize this project for a release in August, they were very reliant, or they had to be heavily reliant on our editorial material, including all of the material that's shot outside of the States and globally to tell their narrative correctly. Another great example is the film Totally Under Control, which was a film completely about the pandemic, which is not only something that was interesting, but necessary right now. We're all hungry for information about how and why. And a documentary like that cannot exist without relevant, new, globally captured editorial content. So we're very, very aware that this material, and this year has proven to us many times over that we need content fast, and that we have to be a global presence in every possible territory in order to make sure that we have this locally relevant material in order to support these types of projects. Just some examples that I can give you that are kind of outside the documentary world, but really display this point well, is when the pandemic hit and all of these organizations were trying to figure out how to recreate their messaging and pivot their messaging in order to speak to this entirely new world that we found ourselves in. So many of these organizations were reliant on the fact that we were shooting material that was then uploaded and ready on the site within 30 minutes of an actual event happening, so that they could then not only utilize that material, but then also utilize our resources to make sure it was media friendly and to put it out there into the world. So, again, it's like we understand that responsibility as a media organization to make sure that this content is captured and able to be accessible very, very quickly and timely, because we've never been in a world where relevant and timely content is as important as it is right now to make sure that all of us are, included in all of this messaging. So,
and I know you've come up with some innovative new approaches to help documentary filmmakers, for example, and all of us here today. So maybe you could talk a little bit about some of those things that you're coming up with.
Absolutely. So that one site that I just showed, the Archival website, that's certainly something that I encourage everyone to keep their eye on as we share new content from the archive. But something I also wanted to showcase was, this is a little iPad tool that we created. And I'm going to just run through this really quickly. Again, we can offer this as a leave behind, and you can just peruse at your leisure. But something I want to point out is we're very proactive in making sure that we're looking at upcoming anniversaries. We know that looking at history, looking at the 10-year, the 15-year, the 20-year, the 25th anniversary of a lot of these very important events is great for documentary and also great for inspiration. And not only do we create these boards that you can take a look at, but you can also utilize the website to really look for inspiration as well by actually conducting searches within a certain time period. You can sort of take a look at, well, what happened within these time periods? What would be relevant? What happened in Canada during this particular segment? Maybe there's something there that I can derive some inspiration from. Maybe I didn't realize that a lot of content had been captured around a particular event, et cetera, et cetera. So that's something to certainly keep in mind. I also want to just quickly point out that the idea of proof of concept is really important to us. We don't want to be a part of the post-production conversation anymore. We really want to be part of the creative process and really be a creative partner from development to distribution. So we're really understanding when it comes to the fact that we know watermarked imagery does not sell. You cannot sell a sizzle with watermarked imagery. It takes people right out of it. Everybody's eyes are very savvy these days, and we know that content needs to look professional and polished. And so we are very open to providing, when we can, final elements to content prior to licensing so that you can create really professional looking sizzles in order to get funding. And we have some examples on this page that I'll let you walk through on your own. But it's just to highlight that you can take licensed content and create an entire sizzle, create an entire proof of concept just from this material, and really sell a project and get funding for that project and get it greenlit. And the more we're seeing this happen, the more we're seeing people really utilizing this licensed content to tell the entire narrative. It is possible to do that. And we're seeing a lot of shows that are utilizing more and more and more of licensed material to tell their stories, because there really is nothing more impactful than actual editorial content.
Exactly.
It tells a story like nothing else. There's no recreation, there's no dramatization, there's nothing that you can create that has the gravity. And the Tiananmen Square video is sort of a great example of that, that there you could not recreate that sort of bravery and that courage and that humanity in any sort of clip that dramatic clip that you could create. There's no substitute for any of this. So I'll leave this behind, as I said, and oh gosh, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but these two pieces are actual videos that one of our marketing partners created, and they are fantastic. So I'll leave links for those as well. Endless Stories is an interactive movie that showcases the depth and breadth of the archive and shows how you can create a narrative film solely out of licensed material. And my colleagues are laughing, I'm sure, because I talk about this nonstop. Anyway, I will let you guys peruse that.
Great to see passion. A lot of the documentary filmmakers who've tuned in today have wonderful collections of their own of great material that they've shot in HD in remote locations like the Canadian Arctic and overseas. And I'm wondering if how can they work with you? And I know you have this wonderful app, the Work With Us app, but maybe one of you could talk a little bit about how that might be possible for Canadian documentarians to possibly have their work submitted and considered for Getty Images.
Send us your stuff. We are constantly looking for contributors. We're constantly looking for local material. And if you have material that is unique, it's from a location that's hard to access, and this can literally be anything. If you have content of your family and you can get releases for those people in the clips, this is valuable material to us. Many people sort of always think of licensed content as being the beautiful scenic material that you see in a commercial. That's not true. Companies like ours need everything. We need a complete picture of what the world really looks like, from the scenics to the not so scenic, from celebrities on the red carpet to everyday people. So if you have material that you're shooting for your own projects, and it's something unique that you would like to potentially monetize, we'll send the link to our Work With Us app, but submit your material to us, because you might as well make that content work for you. If you're shooting it and it's your B-roll, you're not utilizing it, monetize it.
Exactly. That's wonderful. I would like to talk a little bit about process and just exactly how one accesses the collection and how do you begin that process. So maybe either Darlene or Eric or Jeff, any of you would like to just start and talk a little bit. I know we always start at the website, most of us, but perhaps you could talk about what comes after the website and how to work the best with the website.
Sure.
Eric, do
I'm
you
happy
want
to.
Do you want me to show the collections?
Sure, if you want to go ahead, and then I can
Okay.
jump in after that.
I'm going to show you why you need Eric's help when it comes to offline content, and also why I need his help when it comes to offline content. So just to give you a little visual, this is a page that we created to sort of showcase our video partner collections and give a little nod to some of the incredibly dramatic and important material that we've shot this year. But what I really want to show you on this page is the menu. When we're talking about the Getty Images collection, we're talking about a huge amount of material. So, and in many cases, a lot of this content is offline. It's housed within these archives. And so this is where understanding, you know, and having that professional experience and Eric's expertise really, really comes in handy. So, Eric, I'll hand it over to you if you'd like to talk about the process and access.
Sure, no, I'm happy. Let me just share my screen real quick. Hopefully everybody can see my screen. It's just our landing video page at Getty. So I know when we took the poll at the beginning, many of you haven't used Getty Images. Here you can see, you know, if you click here, this is our main landing page. It will normally default and take you to whatever you searched last as far as images or video, but you can restrict your results to show all images, creative or editorial images, and then all video, creative or editorial video. And here on the landing page, similar to what Heather just showed, you see for video, creative, and editorial are here. And if you scroll down to the bottom, there's even, I think, a few more than the ones Heather just showed. It's got a list of all our big partners. So if there's a collection that you know you've worked with in the past and enjoy, most of the time you want to just search within that specific collection, you can click anywhere in here and you'll see it'll take you Anadolu. There's a news agency out of Turkey. They do a lot of Middle Eastern and Asian news, and you can see to take you to, you know, all the 45,000 plus clips that we have from Anadolu. I'll clear that. So we're back to everything. And now here you can see we have over almost 5.5 million just editorial video assets. Now, a lot of those are text records for BBC and NBC, TN, but this will bring up everything. So a quick search term trick that I think a lot of people don't always realize, especially for documentarians, when you're looking for a place or even a specific person, is to use quotation marks, because our editorial search algorithm is that it grabs from everywhere, the caption, the keyword, the metadata. So like I was recently doing a search for Stan Lee. Oops, sorry. And hold on, let's see if you can move this panel. Oh, sorry, 1 second. I have my Zoom panel right where I need to, and now it's frozen. Did I freeze? Can you guys hear me?
Mm-hmm. Can hear you, but your image is frozen, it looks like. Well, we'll wait for that to unfreeze. Darlene, do you want to?
Sorry about that. Am I back?
You're back.
Okay, good. Can you guys see my screen again? Or no?
Yes.
Am I sharing my screen? The Stan Lee clips?
I think it might be frozen.
It's frozen on Stan.
Okay, no, that's okay. All right.
477 videos. It says.
Okay, great. No, we're where we need to be. Sorry about that. Okay, so as I was mentioning, it will pull from everything. So if you put Stan Lee in quotation marks, you'll see that the 477 videos goes down to 211. So right away, you know, we're refining our results to find you so you can find what you need that much more quickly. Now, the other, this is our filters column on the left, and a lot of these are very self-explanatory as far as using them to further refine your results. Heather mentioned before, you can customize a date range if you need a clip that's a certain duration, format, frame rate, etc. But a couple of things here in the filters column I think are worth mentioning are, first and foremost, this thing at the bottom, which is new. I lobbied for years, and I'm thrilled to announce that is now on our site, is you can search for just text records or just digitized clips or both. Usually your search results will default to both, and you'll see this clicked online and offline. But if you need something quickly and you don't have time to wait to go the offline route for previews and, you know, selecting clips for copyright check, etc., you can go to online only, which is essentially digitized clips only, and you'll see that 211 went down to 128. So now we've gotten rid of the text records, and these should all just be digitized clips. Now you might come across something in here where it's like somebody at a Stan Lee, you know, tribute movie or something. And so another thing that's in the filters column that's often very useful is in the people section, specific people. If you click Stan Lee within here, it should show only clips. You know, we went down to 66, only show clips with Stanley. So I know a lot of times, especially for stills, like you're looking for something, a person at an event, and, you know, maybe it's an event in their honor, and you get, you know, thousands and thousands of stills. And as you start to scroll through them, you're saying, wait, this is not the person I'm looking for. So definitely utilize that specific people aspect of the filters column to really find what it is you need that much more quickly.
Eric,
And
can you try sharing your screen one more time? I think it may have just slipped.
Sorry.
But all good information.
So something I just want to add
Is
too.
it there? No?
Now we can see
videos?
it.
Yeah, now we can see it. Yeah.
Is something that I just want to add that I'm guilty of myself is often starting a search on Google. Don't do that. That only leads to trouble. Start your search on Getty, because then you'll actually be finding content that can be licensed, where often if you start your search on Google, that either that material can't be licensed or it's very hard to find the copyright owner for that material. And if you end up using that material in a sizzle and somebody falls in love with it and you can't use it, it can be very problematic. And so we often do a lot of cleanup work on material that has been found on Google and replace it with content with Getty. So you can use Getty instead as a search engine. So Eric's gonna, again, show that filter column that can be really helpful and replace that Google search.
Right. So yeah, I mean, like I said, you know, I don't want to grind the meeting to a halt with a search demo that takes forever and people tune out. But you know, really use the filters column. You can use other search terms. You can use multiple sets of parentheses up here. You can search by decade. It will understand or not in the search term box. It will infer and automatically. So if you write like 1950s house plumber, it'll read that as 1950s and house and plumber, and theoretically should, you know, only return applicable results. But the thing that I would implore most, and if, you know, you only remember one thing from everything I say today, is set aside 10 minutes, go to our site and just start searching for fun things that you enjoy looking at yourself, you know, whether it's like, you know, skylines of cities or people dressing up their pets or whatever it is, because you'll learn so much more about how to best utilize all the functionality of our site by just poking around for 10 or 15 minutes yourself and clicking things and see what happens, more than you will me just talking at you right now. Just a couple of things I'll finally, you know, mention. If you double click on any asset, it opens up to what's called our ADP, asset details page. So, you know, a clip will automatically start to play. On the side here, you'll see restrictions, when it was shot, if we know the original format that it was mastered from, and all that kind of stuff. Back in the day, they used to call them light boxes, but now there are boards. So you can create boards and, you know, gather stills and clips together in one board, share the board via a link with your collaborators. People can make notes on assets in the board. So like I said, really when you have, you know, 10 minutes that you can set aside and you're not that busy, go to our site and just start messing around, because you'll learn so much more that way. So.
Well, thank you. That's incredibly informative, and it only took me about 5 years to get what you just told me. So that's great. I think it would be wonderful to take a little bit of time for us to learn about the partnership with Doc and Getty. And Jeff, since you're here in Canada, maybe you can talk a little bit about that and what is involved. And Darlene, if you want to jump in, feel free.
Absolutely. I did want to jump on one thing that Eric, I think, might not have mentioned is Getty also owns iStock. So iStockphotos.com, tens of millions of images and clips. We can provide access to iStock via a Getty login. So, you know, as with everything, reach out to Darlene and I. We're your single point of contact. We'll navigate everything related to searches, offline searches, pricing, billing, anything that you need, reach us. We're your single point of contact, so we want to make your lives easy. And that to me is probably one of the best benefits of this relationship, is you have us as a guide. So use us as a resource. We have such a depth of library. Sometimes it's hard to navigate, so let us help you with that. We can help you navigate the licensing issues and questions around. Some collections have specific rules and restrictions and price issues. And so let us help you navigate that. Contact us first. That's why it's best as early in the project as possible. In addition to price, price, we are certainly, the relationship offers a minimum of 15%. And I think that's a great place to start. But that we have lots of flexibility. And the first question that me and Darlene tend to ask is, what type of budgets are we working with? We don't need the absolute specific number. We're not going to hold you to it, but it really helps us guide the conversation in, where to focus on some of the material, what the volume, is potentially looking like, and how best we can support you in each particular project. So certainly that helps, and competitive. I love to be competitive. So when somebody says, Pond 5 is $125, I'll ask, what's the currency? Usually it's US. I'll say, we can do that in Canadian dollars. So, talk to us about that. And please don't get discouraged from using our calculator, particularly on video. Please reach out directly. And research. Research is particularly for the documentary community. Eric is an encyclopedia. We work together. We'll reach out to him to help us get him to navigate, what's available. It's a little dicey with COVID. Some of our archival partners are currently closed, so it's a little difficult to get things that particularly are things like are on a tape. So it's hard to go and archive to grab a tape from backup, but there's a light at the end of the tunnel. So particularly these things take a long time to complete. So get us in as early so that as soon as the archives do open, we can get in there quickly and let you know what's available. And then as Heather alluded to, watermark free, high resolution access to our materials. So we want to help support you in sizzle reels and getting your projects approved, whatever we can do. And having access to high resolution watermark free material, again, reach out, talk to us. We can get that to you. We can do it one-off, or we've got it as a service where you use your login credentials and you can download them as you need them.
And Darlene, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
No, Jeff covered everything. I would just like to piggyback and just reiterate the, in terms of our easy access, our unwatermarked high-res comps, feel free to use these. I find that if you have access to Getty Images, it's really easy to create boards, share them internally. It helps your internal organization workflow. So I do highly recommend, if you are working on a project, whether it's in development or post, to get access to easy access, and we can help you set that up.
That's great. I know a lot of people here are working with CAVCO and government funding, CMF funding, and sometimes there's a restriction on the amount of money that they spend outside of Canada. Can you address that a little bit in terms of invoicing and working with the material being considered Canadian content? Jeff?
I mean, the good news is last year, Getty created a Canadian entity. So anything purchased with Darlene and I is purchased under Getty Images Canada. So it's a Canadian address, Canadian spend, Canadian dollars. So certainly, whether we're talking about a tax credit or a Canadian spend, we're unique, particularly because it's Getty Canada, and there's no doubt any of those supports that you're reaching into, the licensing is Getty Canada in Canadian dollars and Canadian spend. So,
which is a huge advantage, because often if you're working on an international story, you can really go over your Canadian thresholds quite quickly. So yeah, it's great news that that's been developed. So
it's not uncommon for co-pros to come and reach out to us and have all of the billing done in Canadian dollars. A, the advantage of currency, and B, is it's under the Canadian spend. So we love that.
Great. I wanted to just check in with our wonderful producer here and see if we have very many questions and whether we should talk about that, or whether we should look at one more of the marvelous tools that Getty offers. So do we have some questions that have been coming in?
We do. I would invite more questions to come rolling in. Okay. Let's start off with, so there's been a few questions about submitting material. So this one from Nikki Cole, does our own material have to be digitized, or can it be on older formats like Beta, etc.?
We will need it to be digitized in this case. In order for our submissions team to view the content, it does need to be digitized. So yes, the answer to that is yes. We just don't have it in our resources or support team to be able to view older content. I just don't even think we have the resources to view material anymore. Eric and I remember the days when we had every possible technological device on one rack, and we did everything in old Sony U-matic 3/4, but we don't even have those anymore, sadly.
The old dream station.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty hard to find U-matic 3/4 inch U-matic in Toronto. I mean, everybody's always saying, is there one still working? So, so here we have Michelle one of the members of the Visual Researchers Society. And she's just saying a thank you to Getty and for being here today. So that's a nice shout out. And to you, Eric, I'm sure she's worked with you a lot. And back to our marvelous producer. What else do you have in the hopper in terms of chats and questions?
So a question from Pradeep. So he's asking about how long do the licenses for submitted footage last? In general, are there different options? So when you submit footage, how long will Getty hold the rights for?
In general, they're in perpetuity, particularly for documentary films, all media worldwide. The license can vary whether there's a theatrical distribution, but the term is in perpetuity.
I think they were referring to material being submitted to be represented by Getty. Am I correct? Was that the question?
So the question reads, licensing from Getty is a 25
from Getty. Okay.
/ in perpetuity / other time window.
Then Jeff's response holds true. Yeah,
yes.
we can tailor licenses to really whatever time frame you need. In general, you're going to want an in perpetuity license for a documentary project just to make it usable in whatever mediums exist now and in the future. But certainly if you are only licensing for festival use, or there's a specific duration you need for whatever type of project you're working on, if the duration is going to be unique, we can do that as well. So it's really customizable.
Okay, and Nikki asks, are the rights that Getty holds on submitted footage exclusive?
Not necessarily. It's going to vary between contract to contract. There are some organizations that exclusively license through us, so exclusive, in fact, that they need to license their own material from us. Yes, that does exist. But in some cases, we do have organizations that will continue to license their material themselves, in addition to Getty licensing their material. And the reason that they do that is Getty gives them a global presence that they may not have otherwise. And in some cases, some organizations are going to continue to license in their specific territory, where Getty will only represent them in a global presence or internationally, and they'll continue to license to a certain country or a certain territory that they are located in. So it does vary depending on the contract, depending on the company, and depending how they want their material to be licensed and what their objective is in coming to Getty as a licensor.
Okay. John asks, he asks, I think I missed whether doc members get a global discount or if each project gets negotiated separately.
The partnership offers a minimum 15% discounts, and we do that primarily because there are some collections that do have some restrictions in terms of discounts. we'll work towards the way you want to work. So if you would prefer some upfront pricing, knowing that there is a bundle of projects, we can do that. If you prefer project to project, I prefer that because some projects you'll come to us or people will come to us and it'll be, you know, this is a hefty documentary. We've got significant budget. We've got lots of support. And, you know, we can open up the library and be super flexible in terms of what we can offer, particularly on volume. Others is, this is a project of love. I'm self-funding it. I'm putting it on my Visa card. You know, I have no budget. What can you do? So, you know, talk to us as early in the project as possible. And we love to support those types of projects, particularly if this is, you know, projects that you do on a fairly regular basis. So, you know, that gives us the flexibility to be able to support those self-funded labors of love. And others are, you know, you've got Netflix to come and to support you. We can help you with that too.
Okay. Now, Doc does have a few internationally based members, and this one comes from Olivia, who asks, very good regarding the Canadian spend. Do you have an Irish Getty as well?
We do. We have offices in over 200 countries. So if you need to license material in a different territory outside of North America, we'll be happy to connect you with one of our overseas colleagues and of course extend whatever benefits and discounts that we've applied to DOC just through a different territory. So yeah, just let us know if that is a need. And also something I just wanted to add while we're speaking about different territories is we know that there are French-speaking members of the DOC who'd prefer to work in their native language. And we are going to be implementing French-speaking resources next year for North America. So should anybody need assistance in French in the meantime, please just let us know and we'll utilize our internal resources to help you right now, but something more formal will be set in place next year. So just wanted to put that out there.
Great.
Okay. And Tamarzi asks, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing, can you speak to the manipulation of images? Say, for example, I could only afford a still shot and I wanted to make it move through animation. Also, with your celebrity images, did you have to secure permission from those specific people?
Great question. Oh, we could talk about this for another hour. Okay, so I'll try to keep it short. Okay, first, manipulations on imagery. So this is a huge subject, but to sort of kind of give you the basics. So when we're talking about creative content, you can manipulate creative content. There's really no problem with that, as long as you're not doing anything that would be defamatory, something that would be objectionable via our terms and conditions. Editorial content is a little different in that you always have to make sure that you're not damaging the editorial integrity of a piece of footage or a particular still image. And when we're talking about documentary use, that becomes really important in that you can't manipulate content in order to change the context of history. You can't manipulate material if it's going to support your thesis and your thesis is not actually what happened. And I'm not talking about revisionist history. That's going to be something totally different. I'm talking about if you're manipulating something where it's really damaging the integrity of the photo. Now, if you're manipulating, let's say we have a photo of, you know, Winston Churchill having a nice glass of cognac, and you just want to sort of manipulate the glass like shimmering or him like tipping the glass forward, that's fine. That's an artistic decision. You're not manipulating history in any way. We generally like to check these manipulations with the content owner if we are not in fact, if we don't in fact own the copyright outright. So we want to make sure that everybody's comfortable with the manipulations. Generally speaking, that's sort of a good gauge. Now, celebrities, let's talk about right of publicity for a second. This is also a challenging subject, and Elizabeth, you can probably talk to this too. When we're talking about documentary work, there may be certain situations where you do want to contact the estate or the representation for a particular celebrity or historical figure or famous person, because you want to work with that estate. They may have content that you need. You want to make sure that there's full transparency, that you have their support. But when we're talking about documentary work, editorial work, technically speaking, you don't necessarily need approvals. Now, I say that not as a lawyer, and I say that with, this is always a gray area. You really have to decide with your legal team as to whether or not you need to clear the right of publicity of a particular person that you may be making a documentary about, or who may appear in your documentary. And there's going to be a lot of criteria that goes into understanding and defining right of publicity. It's going to be different for every territory, different for every state, different for every city, different for periods of time, different. I mean, there's so much that goes into this. So definitely do the homework on the back end and decide for yourself. Now, Getty Images doesn't require you to prove that you've secured the right of publicity from any celebrity or famous person in order to license our material. We're not providing you with a release for the person in the photograph or video clip, but you don't have to prove that you've gotten any sort of clearance beyond the license that we provide in order to use that content. It's really going to be the determination of your legal team and your distribution team when you in fact are ready to distribute material as to whether or not clearance is going to be required. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. Elizabeth, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I'd also point out that when you're using something in context within the documentary, so that it's not being used in a trailer or a sizzle or a promotional marketing type of use, that's often perceived as different because it's within the editorial context of the documentary. So I often recommend to filmmakers not to use something that could be contentious as a marketing tool, but strictly keep it within the context of what they call in context editorial use. And that makes it a lot simpler. And then you don't have to clear as much except for what you are using in the marketing materials. It's different. What's great about one of the things that I often tell producers, because every 2 years another Olympic film comes along and we all have to deal with the IOC. And what's great about the Getty material is you've already done all that heavy lifting of the rights clearances. And so if you have a smaller budget, you can get marvelous photographs from Getty that are a fraction of the cost of trying to license 30 seconds of material from those who shall remain nameless who represent the IOC. But it's just, there's ways of looking, there's lots of ways to make your budget work. And Getty's been great at helping me over the years of saying, well, Elizabeth, you need Clara Hughes getting her medal put around her neck. We can do a photo for that. That's not going to break your budget. But if I were to go to the IOC, it would be quite expensive. So those are the kinds of things that Getty likes to help out on.
Perfect.
So Vince, what have we got?
Yeah.
What's in the hopper?
In a similar vein. So this one comes from Jeremy, and I apologize for condensing this. So I saw some Indigenous people featured in the show reel. Does Getty have a policy around Indigenous intellectual property? Are you getting releases, and are profits shared with the communities themselves?
It depends. And those particular shots in the editorial show reel, I can't speak to directly. I'm not sure if those, those actually fall into editorial, so I can. When we're talking about editorial content is generally never released. We just, by virtue of what it is, it's been shot by a news photographer or videographer, and therefore it is not released. When we're talking about creative content, if we have in fact set up a shot with Indigenous people and gotten their permission, then certainly there is going to be some sort of reciprocation there. Whether that's they're paid outright or whether that's profit sharing, it's going to be dependent on the contract that we have with the Indigenous peoples. But that will be separate from editorial, where we're capturing an event we're capturing some sort of newsworthy item, as opposed to creative content where we are going to set it up as a shoot, we're going to release it, and we're going to pay the people for their time and for their efforts. So it's going to be dependent on what collection that content falls into and how it was captured.
Great. Do we have time for 2 more questions, or should we? Yeah,
I do.
Gotcha. Okay. So Elizabeth asks, if an archive is to be used as part of a documentary's dramatic recreations and scripted dialogue scenes, so a docudrama, does it impact the cost of the license as opposed to an archive used in a more traditional documentary with no reenactments?
Well, I can take this one. So again, just to reiterate, if you missed it, there are a few different options when we're talking about licensing. And we could look at a docu-series as something different than, you know, a straightforward documentary film or a docudrama. And I think that each rep kind of, it's a gray area, but we make our decisions kind of per project, and I would say for as long as it's within the documentary vein, even if it is, let's say, scripted in some way, that it would still fall under the documentary license that we would provide with you know, all media in perpetuity if requested as well.
Great.
I think you always need to look at projects too, in terms of, you know, how vast is the scope of the project? Not exactly what the project is, but I mean, if you're going to show a movie in your backyard for one day, that's totally different than if you're going to release this internationally. You know, there's this, think about things in terms of scope, and sometimes subject matter, and whether that's a docudrama or documentary does factor into that. So.
Good point. Exposure. Yeah.
Right. Okay. And does your content include headlines from newspapers past?
I'm happy to take this one. Yes, is the quick answer. We have both still photos and video clips that cover newspaper headlines, front pages. We have some that are actuals and then some that are fictional. You know, from various collections from various times. Certain newspapers themselves do have some idiosyncratic stipulations around them. Often Pars International has to get involved, which a lot of papers deal with, because it becomes an issue of the photos that appear on the page. And then on top of that, there's another layer of copyright issues regarding logos or the article itself and the paper's headline and that kind of thing. So it usually becomes a 2-step process as far as potentially acquiring new content of newspaper headlines. But to make a long story longer, the answer is yes. We have stills and video clips with newspaper headlines.
Great. And I think in terms of our questions, we've had some great questions, and but I thought I would just toss it back to our esteemed group, our panelists here. And if you have a parting comment or something you'd like to say that you didn't get a chance to earlier, this is your chance. So here's your wrap up talk. We'll start with you, Jeff.
I would reiterate, you know, if you're not familiar with this, give us a call. We have such an amazing collection and an amazing group of talented team of researchers and support folks. You know, we're here to make your life easier, and you know, call us, email us. We're here for you, so please.
Great. Darlene?
Yeah, I would just like to say I'm really excited for this opportunity to partner with the DOC. You know, this is our space. Jeff and I, we live in this. We've worked in the documentary space. I think more we kind of chose, Jeff and I chose this this industry. Speaking more to the documentary, it's a passion of ours, and you know, and you know, we understand the space. So yeah, I'm just really excited, and no conversation is, you know, we welcome everything, and let's have those talks. And my gardeners, of course, come by at this time. I don't know if you guys can hear that, but so that's it for me. Feel free to give us a ring. And again, let's have the chats, and looking forward to making it work for your budgets and continuing the conversation.
Great. Well, I want to thank you all. You've been terrific and so forthcoming. And I especially want to thank Dock Organization of Canada for making this initiative happen. And Vince, you've done a great job of providing all the necessary support. And a special shout out to Michelle Van Buzicom, who's put it all together. And so in terms of one last question, in terms of getting access to the material, I guess that's all going to be done through the Dock YouTube channel. Is that correct, Vince? Just so everybody knows where they can come back to explore.
Yeah, so I'm going to be putting this recording on our YouTube channel. So it's going to take a couple days to upload and get the captions up. Once that's up there, I'm going to be sending out a follow-up email with all of the contact details for Jeff, Darlene, and a summary of what took place in this meeting and where you can go to access all the information you need. So that will be followed.
So Darlene, go ahead.
I said we won't be including the link for the Estelle Getty t-shirt. You have to find that on your own. And I suggest doing it quickly before our legal team pulls it. So,
So I'd like to thank Darlene and Jeff and Eric and Heather. So thank you all so very much. It's been great fun. And I look forward to working with you all in the future. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.